He suddenly realizes that he is riding on horseback, noting with surprise what is happening, but still looking ahead with a firm intention. Then Lux, sensing something amiss, wonders what exactly he sees when he looks down the street. At this point, the narrative introduces the title Echoes of Eternity, abbreviated EOE, against a dark hexagonal pattern. Then a scene of a role-playing game appears in a medieval fantasy setting, a castle towering village buildings, and the narrator explains that its epic history has lasted for over 2,000 years. The narrative goes on to clarify that despite countless items, character classes, and thousands of hours of gameplay, mastering everything is impossible, as even 3 years later, players are still discovering new strategies. After this, the group, including the main character, rushes to the aid of the city, which has been subjected to a fierce attack by monsters, while dragons circle menacingly above them. He confidently claims that he knows the game's opening scene perfectly well and has no doubt about it, but an unexpected event interrupts his concentration. Meanwhile, among the ruins, he is struck by the incredible realism, noting that not only the image but also the sounds make what is happening authentic. Then he wonders why he sees everything from this point of view, if this is really EOE, and doubts overwhelm him. It seems to the writer that there is no one ahead, and he feels the road in front of him is almost empty. At this moment, the fair-haired woman insistently demands instructions from the captain, and he recognizes her with shock, his eyes widening. The hero remembers Natalia Norfolk, deputy captain of the 3rd Special Forces of the Holy Empire of Eternia, whom he met more than once in the game. After this, the two partners anxiously ask the captain to pull himself together, and one of them, amazed, asks who he really is. Lux is overcome with disbelief when he notices a sudden, dangerous wound on his shoulder, and disturbing thoughts swarm through his head. The man wonders why he ended up as Silva, trying to comprehend how something like this could have happened. He then recalls how he stocked up on energy drinks at the store in advance to start a new game route. On the way back, he noticed a woman who had almost been hit by a speeding truck and immediately rushed towards her. Then he remembers how he instinctively jumped to shield her, but ended up getting hit himself, and now he wonders if he died in the accident and was reborn in the game world. He continues to be tormented by the question of why he ended up in the role of Silva, since usually such stories involve reincarnation in the hero's body. Concluding the introduction, the narrator introduces Silva Pierce as the captain of the 3rd Special Forces of the Holy Empire of Eternia, recognized as the strongest knight in the kingdom with outstanding stats and many powerful skills. A tense scene unfolds as the writer desperately demands orders from the captain, at which point the narrative reveals a monumental problem that could ruin everything. Then the armored leader orders his men to destroy the monsters and protect the survivors, and he himself decides to personally deal with the source of the attack and complete the prologue. Reynold orders all units to disperse and calls upon the Silver Spear's blessing, while Haruto focuses on eliminating the main enemy behind the heroine's rescue. Meanwhile, Reynold encounters a huge bird of prey, diving down with its claws outstretched, its piercing cry echoing throughout the area. One of the observers watches the two galloping horsemen and doubts that a reckless charge will help, wondering if they can cope with the monster. At this moment, he remembers that just recently he was just a player, living peacefully in the real world, and his gaze reflects a sudden awareness of what is happening. Then Reynold delivers a powerful blow to Haruto, shouting a battle cry, and Haruto is amazed to realize its overwhelming power. Haruto admits that the move wasn't even a skill, but just a normal attack, and reluctantly agrees with this, since the blow came from Silva. The narration explains that while everyone starts at level 10, Silva starts at level 60, so even early on with low-level monsters he's on a completely different level. He declares with firm confidence that the enemies do not have a single chance, and determination is clearly visible in his eyes. Next, the narration explains that a spatial rift is a crack in the dimension from which monsters emerge, and that closing such rifts is the primary task of the special forces. One of the armored fighters remarks that the rift looks even more terrifying in such detail, to which the other responds that its destruction will mark the end of the prologue. Then someone urgently asks about the location of the desired object, and immediately another one points out its exact location. He explains that the rift can only be closed by defeating the boss monster, and if he succeeds in this task, his role in the prologue will be completed. A gigantic beast, several times taller than him, appears before him, but strangely enough he feels no fear and calmly prepares for battle. The man, with a confident smile, calls himself Silva, explaining that his body and mind have been tempered by countless battles. The narration notes that the player has a keen understanding of Silva's power and emphasizes how important this knowledge will be in the upcoming fight. Following this, a swift move called Punishment Divine Piercing Strike splits the stage, focusing attention on the figure that unleashed the devastating blow. Reynold closes the rift with his spear, marking the end of the prologue, and behind him remains the battlefield, reduced to ruins. The hero takes a step on the cracked earth and thinks about the colossal problem that still needs to be solved. The narrative reveals that at the climax of the first chapter, Silva is doomed to die, setting a dark tone for the rest of the story. The scene then shifts to a crumbling ruin, where Silva sacrifices himself to save the hero, and the narrator explains that his inevitable death concludes the first chapter. After this, it is said that devoted fans even asked the developers to release DLC with an alternative survival scenario, but everyone resigned themselves to the fact that Silva's fate was unchanged and he would never live to see this second chapter. Meanwhile, Reynold firmly states that now, as himself, he refuses to accept such an outcome, and looks down at the massive furry creature. Alicia worriedly asks the captain about his condition, but he firmly replies that he does not intend to die here, despite all the hardships he endured in the real world. After this, Reynold reports that the rift has been closed and inquires about the state of affairs on the other side. The silver-haired mage reports that the monsters in the city have been destroyed and the survivors are already being led to a safe place, and the dark-haired warrior approvingly notes their efforts. Alicia praises her captain for skillfully closing the rift single-handedly, and Haruto confirms that one of the people is safe, much to the surprise of those around him. At the headquarters of the 3rd Special Forces in the royal capital of Aurora, a man sits at a table, exhaustedly wondering what he should do next. He wonders if Silva is behind all this, feeling uneasy because the situation, despite its realism, still feels like a game, and someone nearby is silently watching him. He looks at the game screen with incredibly high stats, noting that the support character is no longer able to grow or change classes. Left alone in a quiet room, he reflects on the impossibility of surviving such a deadly event alone, and at the same time considers Silva to be one of the strongest in the world at the moment. He hesitates, looking up with a conflicted expression, wondering if he should just run away. The character then reflects on the rules of the game world and realizes that if the hero or heroine dies, the world itself will be doomed, and escaping only guarantees the death of one of them. Lux Arwen coldly admits that the situation is completely hopeless, adding that they only have a month left. A young man with short hair greets Natalia, and she replies that she has come to report on procedures related to their previous mission. He seriously considers what is happening and explains that the first thing that needs to be done is to deal with the unknown girl rescued by the Transgent Squad at this point in history. At the same time, a hero named Kyle, along with Mia, are pursuing Layla, who woke up and escaped from the barracks, and Silva, according to the plot, is absent until the final event. The man realizes that he will have to develop his own plan, but immediately asks himself if he is just following a pre-written script, and doubt and irritation are visible on his face. Having finished her report, she asks if there are any more questions, but he answers in the negative and lets her go, accompanying her departure with praise. Lux Arwen, maintaining a cold expression, accepts the order and politely asks permission to leave, after which she turns to leave the room. Then the man asks if he has any thoughts, and the young man abruptly stops him, realizing that Silva alone might not be enough. He insistently says that he has an important request, emphasizing its importance, and the interlocutor readily urges him not to hesitate and voice it right now. Meanwhile, Haruto, with a confident smirk, demands that someone take off their clothes, and Alicia reacts to this demand with obvious bewilderment. One of the characters anxiously asks the captain to repeat the question, and he insistently demands if she can take off her clothes. Then she reluctantly agrees to do it if the squad needs it, but at the same time openly admits that she does not understand why it is required. He accepts her argument and offers to explain everything step by step in detail while she listens to him attentively. One of the participants admits that he always considered the other more suitable for a different role, and the other immediately asks what this has to do with the naked orders. Soon an urgent message sounds that the new role is a dancer, and the recipient reacts with surprise and disbelief. The man acknowledges the other's previous successes as a knight, but declares that now he will shine precisely as a dancer. The narration explains that the dancer class uses dance and prayer to channel natural power, using health instead of magicka, which is perfect for Natalia's low spirit. The character, wide-eyed and sweating, doubts what is happening and asks if this is a joke, but then hears firm confirmation that there is no joke here. Reynold recognizes the talent and asks another to perform a dance for the company, and the other asks if he is still needed as a knight, and eventually agrees. Someone hesitates, trying to explain the situation, but another insists that if this is the captain's will, then they will obey, adding that this should have been said immediately. One character fervently confesses his admiration and despair, declaring that he will commit suicide if he is no longer needed. Immediately, another one rushes to stop him, and then explains that she has the lowest spirit stat in the entire game, which makes her mentally unstable. She desperately demands to be released, claiming that she would rather go outside and die than remain useless. She asks if she should use the body since she can't live up to expectations as a knight, and he replies that no one called her useless and denies any misunderstanding. He abruptly refuses her intention, swears by the silver spear and begs for her support to save everyone. The narrative reveals that the silver spear is the emblem of the company, and the oath sworn upon it is a ritual that obliges the entire company to go into battle without hesitation. He admitted that he understood how dear the spear emblem was to her, and regretfully asked her to become a dancer for the sake of the squad, while assuring her that she should trust his decision. Then he nervously noted that he realized the seriousness of the situation, but then sharply shouted out agreement, determination flashing in his eyes. The man confirmed his intention to accept the new role and ordered the other party to change into a specially prepared outfit. The girl asked hesitantly about the costume, while the young man reassured her, reminding her of their agreement, and the third participant admitted that although the image looked good, there were still some doubts about it. After this, she asked the captain for his personal opinion, leaving aside the point of view of the entire squad, and he confidently assured her that everything would look great on her, guaranteeing the result. Kageyama intervened in the conversation, insisting on a demonstration, while his interlocutor noticeably hesitated. Then he smiled confidently and explained that it was for this very reason that he insisted on turning Natalia into a dancer, emphasizing that everything matched perfectly. The girl looked puzzled, and at this point the narration noted that more serious-minded individuals have a higher embarrassment factor, which increases their support in battle. The author highlighted that for Natalia this indicator reaches 1.5 times the value, which makes it especially valuable. She demonstrated her unique skill, which is related to her dancing skills, and bright fragments and particles swirled around her in a mesmerizing scene. One of the men encouraged another to take the mage class, causing him to look surprised and apologize, while the third participant encouraged him to continue, and the narration explained that optimal roles are chosen based on knowledge of the game mechanics. He clapped his hands vigorously and noted that there were only 2 seats left to be allocated, expressing his firm determination in the simple room. Soon the captain confidently walked inside, greeted those present, and one of them nervously muttered a morning greeting, while the narrative reminded that in a past life the hero had played this game through and through. The young man named Kyle Transient looked determined, and Mia Hawkeye, acting as an ally, showed slight excitement and surprise. The armored warrior thought about winning the most difficult event in racing and the advantages that the image of Silva gives him, deciding to use all the baggage of knowledge about EOE. Then he clenched his fist and declared that he would fight to the end, categorically refusing to die here. The young man loudly announced his arrival, causing the boy and girl at the bed to start and exclaim, greeting the captain. Harrod was surprised by such a meeting, but he was immediately asked to remain where he was, while another man asked if the victim had woken up. They explained to him that the girl had no serious injuries and that she could have woken up by now, but she was still lying unconscious. He noted that at the moment nothing alarming was observed, and another participant hastened to reassure her, saying that she was not suffering, and the doctors assured her that awakening would definitely come. He opened up by declaring that he was perfectly aware of the child's true identity, and his intense gaze only emphasized the seriousness of what he said. The narrative then introduced Rhea as the heir to the founding line of the Holy Kingdom of Eternia, and Kyle as the protagonist, a knight reincarnated to reseal an evil deity. It was further explained that the main goal of the story is to restore lost memories and powers, as monsters constantly emerge from the rifts seeking to kill Kyle or Rhea. The death of either of them will lead to the revival of the evil deity and the destruction of the world. He reflected on his mission, explaining that he was obliged to take measures to protect Silva in the event of her death, because this did not allow him to absolve himself of responsibility. After that, Haruto turned to Kyle, saying that he wanted to give him something, to which he responded with surprise, and the other man explained that today he came to talk to both of them at once. Kyle picked up the spear and recognized it as the squad symbol belonging to the captain, while the girl next to him exclaimed in shock and refused to accept it. The group began preparing for an event where they would have to fight powerful monsters. The plot involved the two pursuing Rhea after her awakening, and even the low-level Kyle could handle the challenges thanks to the silver spear. Meanwhile, Kageyama categorically refused to accept the sword that Lux extended to him, which surprised him, because he did not expect such decisive resistance. Kageyama acknowledged that he understood his interlocutor's feelings, but emphasized that time was sorely lacking, and at the same time he looked confused and worried. He tried to ease the tension by saying that it wasn't all that important and it was just about the spear. Then one of the soldiers insisted that it was necessary to obey the captain's order, since refusal violated military regulations, but the other one hotly objected, calling it unfair. The young warrior confidently lifted the heavy, decorated weapon and assured his companion that it suited her perfectly. He asked her opinion, and she, with slight embarrassment, admitted that she also considered the spear worthy in his hands. After that, he announced that the next person would be Mia, which made the girl ask in shock if this would really affect her too. The elf with pointed ears received a cross-shaped object from a gloved hand, examined it carefully and noted with alarm that she was not confident in herself. She looked at the man in surprise, and he said with complete confidence that from today on she would become the captain. The girl exclaimed that she was categorically incapable of this, while her interlocutor hesitated, unable to find words, referring only to the will of the captain. The narrator explained that there is a special mechanism: captains get bonus experience, and this is how Mia was planned to develop Hawkeye, emphasizing her strengths and support within the squad. The confident man urged the young elf to try the symbol on her shoulder, but she again nervously stated that she could not become a captain. Then the girl tearfully admitted that she had only recently joined the unit and did not yet really know the names of her fellow soldiers, but the man gently assured her that everything would work out if she tried to give orders as a commander. The man explained that the decision was not his own, but was dictated by the Eternal Tree, as stated in the prophetic book, and this admission stunned his interlocutor. The narrative then clarified that in the Holy Empire of Eternia, the Eternal Tree symbolizes both the country and God, and its will is the highest command that every warrior must obey. Lux remembered the prophecy the priestess had spoken that morning and, with a heavy heart, admitted that if it was the will of heaven, then nothing could be changed. After this, he coldly remarked that the divine will was just a big lie, adding that others did not need to know the truth at all. The girl anxiously asked Kyle what they should do now, but he replied that if it was about the prophecy, then there was no way out, and the other supported Captain Mia, urging her not to give up. The former commander reassured his comrades, assuring them that Natalia and the entire squad would provide adequate assistance, while one of the soldiers inquired about his future plans. He thought about the recent difficulties with Natalia, but believed that they would cope, rejoicing at the gullibility of some people, although deep down he felt an impending problem as he continued along the forest road. Meanwhile, the narrator asked whether the army would be able to strengthen itself 4 weeks before the event in which Silva was destined to die. He focused on 3 key tasks that would shape his future and stepped forward with a firm intention to act. The armored warrior explained that he intended to level up and complete his armor set, but admitted that Silva's abilities were too great for early training in the capital. Then his companion noticed that, apart from Silva, their squad consisted of poorly trained fighters with mediocre weapons, so the only way to gain strength was through intensive training, while he, meanwhile, considered how important his own power was. He explained that the third goal would be to find new allies, mentioning the many recruits with exceptional skills that could only be acquired through the right method. Reynold was surprised to hear the warning that in order to quickly attract powerful allies, he would have to avoid unnecessary actions and simultaneously advance through several storylines. Haruto was climbing through the branches when a masked stranger grabbed him and told him not to move, while somewhere nearby he heard a desperate cry for help. The goblins, meanwhile, claimed that females of their kind did not exist, so they used human girls for reproduction, adding that such a disgusting incident had never happened before. He realized with all his soul that this was not a game, but real life, and determination flashed in his eyes, reflecting the gravity of the moment. Remembering that in the game he would have ignored such a thing and taken the shortest route, he now hesitated, torn between logic and conscience. But within a moment he refused to abandon the girl to her fate and prepared for battle, clutching his weapon with unyielding stubbornness while the others moved forward. At that moment, the furious figure smashed through the wall with a crushing kick, scattering debris and causing everything around to shake. The wounded girl found herself in safe hands, and a caring question about her condition sounded nearby, filled with anxiety and sympathy. One of them anxiously asked who was in front of him and where they were, but the interlocutor calmly replied that he was just a traveler who had managed to destroy all the monsters. Then the hooded figure admitted with irritation that she had already lost too much time, and her voice sounded with annoyance. After that, he realized that the girl had extremely weak characteristics, and concluded that she was just an NPC, although he initially intended to accept her into the party if she turned out to be strong. He insistently demanded that they leave the forest as quickly as possible, but the writer refused, declaring that he was in a hurry, despite the warning that the life saved could be in vain. She tried to stop the runner, assuring him that she wanted to repay him for his help, but he quickly ran off along the path without looking back. After some time, he and his horse stopped on a hill and noted that they had miraculously managed to arrive on time. Before my eyes lay a majestic city with a huge colosseum, which was considered one of the main shrines of the kingdom and the center of martial arts. At the same time, the narrator clarified that even in the game it was possible to get here at an early stage, although the place is not directly connected with the plot, and the purpose of his visit was different. A mysterious hitman from the capital confidently declared his intention to win wealth and fame, while the crowd enthusiastically welcomed Silva Pierce. The narration explained that there was a stat in EOE called Glory, and at that moment a clenched gloved fist shot up into the air among the scattered sheets. The older man explained to the young girl that reputation affects discounts, access to special tasks and the level of fame among people. The author added that the arena quest, which is not related to the main line, is the best side challenge for accumulating fame. Inside the circular arena, one warrior soared upwards, while a cloaked figure watched the proceedings and noted that this quest embodied the idea of people ascending through the power of their own hands. A powerful blow fell on the opponent, and the announcer loudly declared Silva Pierce the winner, while the spectators watched the tense fight. Then the narrator noted Silva's unexpected victory, and he himself, with a confident smile, admitted that it had been an easy matter for him. Soon a hand appeared in the frame clutching a bag of coins, and a voice praised the fighter for an excellent performance, presenting an award for today's fight. Later he sat in a modestly furnished room and examined the exquisite object, thinking that the thing was not without value, but also did not represent an outstanding benefit. The young man with short blonde hair explained that the reward was given out randomly, adding that he had something more important and confirmed that the contents of the bag were more than enough, while the merchant greeted him warmly. Meanwhile, a cheerful girl in a rabbit costume announced the Fortuna Casino, and next to her two others in a similar outfit listened attentively. The narrator described the place as a fistfight arena by day and a true paradise for gamblers at night, revealing the real reason for their appearance here. Dice rolled and chips jingled on the table, emphasizing the stakes of the gambling game, and one of the players reasoned that the essence here comes down to money, although this way of earning money is not at all realistic. The host then explained the rules, which turned out to be extremely simple. You had to get as close to 21 as possible without going over the line, and that was the essence of blackjack. The player confidently announced his decision to stop, emphasizing that the night was just beginning and he intended to hit the jackpot here. After this he announced his departure, feeling that luck was on his side today, and stopped at the carved door, behind which the sunset was visible over the distant mountains. The narrator soon explained that the game was designed to be as realistic as possible and added that the only sure way to win was by counting cards. Then he noticed that in reality casinos take measures against such techniques, but here the locals are unaware of this, and therefore anyone, given the time, can earn endless money in the casino. Lax Arvin calmly assured his interlocutor that everything was fine, clarifying that he had already made the planned amount at the casino, even though it was still not enough for all purposes. At this time, the girl desperately begged to be let inside, claiming that she was risking her life, but the man hesitated, reproaching her for her inappropriate attire, which did not meet the strict requirements. Lux noticed the appearance of the powerful warrior he had seen before, while one of the girls fell to her knees in surprise. She enthusiastically asked if he remembered her, and he, with a slight grin, replied that their meeting in this place was a truly amusing coincidence. He asked if she was mistaken about his identity, but both girls firmly stated that they would never forget the one who once saved their lives. The dark-haired figure fervently asked not to turn away and not to leave, the tension clearly felt in her words. Lux recalled how she had almost fallen victim to the goblins, after which he noted to himself her unexpected persistence, and the girl herself was embarrassed that she was remembered in this particular light. He praised her for escaping and asked if she had been attacked by monsters on the way. Laughing warmly and easily, she explained that she had simply been following the trail of the defeated monsters, and that the road had therefore turned out to be surprisingly safe. Someone suggested that the scent of goblin blood that covered her during her rescue might have covered her own trail, and remarked that she was indeed incredibly lucky. Lux insisted that he couldn't thank her enough, but she asked if he was happy now and asked him to end the conversation as she didn't have much time. However, Lux Arwen made a determined plea for help, explaining that the guards were refusing to let her into the casino, while two waiters looked at each other nervously at the side. One of them stated that the entrance outfit should cost no less than 10,000 gold, but the interlocutor objected that such clothing would lead her to ruin, and urged her to abandon this idea. With tears in her eyes, she confessed that she had come such a long way hoping to get rich quickly, while someone in the crowd uttered words of disbelief and surprise. The girl, crossing her arms over her chest, asked in bewilderment why someone needed money so desperately, and in response to clarification, only gave a short and confused boo. He then shared his dream of opening his own store in the capital, explaining that he left home at the age of 20 due to constant troubles, goblin raids and even being denied entry to a casino. Lux Arwen looked at her, dumbfounded, wondering if she really expected to get rich quick through gambling and wondering if she was stupid. After this, he noted her strange directness and obedience, deciding that this was exactly the kind of person who could help with small matters, and concluded that this plan would be quite workable. She reacted with surprise when he insisted that she would have to work, and he himself wondered why she should do it if she was still striving for money. The girl asked his name, and he introduced himself as Roma Furs from the village of Maton, promising that he would rely on her support. Then they walked through the streets of the city, and she asked him how he was going to make money here, to which he replied that the arena was famous for this very place. Lux coldly admitted that he intended to defeat random fighters for money, and his companion only noted his abruptness and straightforwardness. After that, she asked if he wanted to see her as a second, and confidently stated that she would prove her skill at least by throwing a towel into the ring, and he admitted that he could rely on her. However, she soon asked in confusion what exactly she should do next, and he explained that she had misunderstood everything. Laden with heavy luggage, she exclaimed about its weight, while he confidently ordered that everything be taken and placed on him. Lux asked how much money was in the bag and whether it was true that it had just been won at the casino, and then Haruto confirmed that the amount was about 2 million gold, warning him not to drop it, which shocked Lux. He angrily told her not to shout and warned her that she was betting on him in 3 upcoming fights and therefore had no right to lose in advance, and she silently swore that she would not let him down. The girl with braids asked who exactly he would fight in the arena, and he answered tensely that he understood what needed to be done. One of those present exclaimed in utter shock upon hearing the name of the Grandmaster, calling it madness, while another calmly noted with curiosity the mention of the arena's ruler. She explained anxiously that they were talking about Tyrant the Cruel, the undefeated Grandmaster of the arena for 3 years, whom even she had heard of. Lux quickly objected, warning of mortal danger, but his one-eyed interlocutor calmly explained that it was the high stakes that gave the situation its significance. The narrator introduced Tyrant the Cruel as a ruthless master of the arena, who controlled the entire city through slavery, drug trafficking, deception, and threats, and noted that defeating him was difficult even for the strongest. Then the man confidently remarked that he knew him much better than anyone else, and there was a calm superiority in his words. The host declared Silva Pierce the winner, noting that one of the top ranks had been defeated quickly, and Silva himself sheepishly asked for the microphone back to the approving roar of the crowd. The man introduced himself as Silva Pierce, a mysterious rising star, and noted with regret that all his opponents up to that point were weaker than even goblins. Then the crowd listened with obvious interest when one of those present said that he had come from the capital in search of truly strong people. He then questioned the Grandmaster's reputation, stating that his supposedly invincible status was questionable and, given recent events, was hardly all that impressive. One of the fighters challenged his opponent to fight without fear, while an observer remarked that the one whose face resembled a hero from northern legends was probably the champion. Another was indignant at why he remained silent, enduring such insults. The blonde warrior responded with a smug grin, while the armored man standing next to him clenched his teeth, showing intense tension and rage. The girl quickly reprimanded her brother for his actions, but he only calmly looked around the room filled with weapons and asked who these people were and what the meaning of what was happening was. Lax warned Haruto to be careful and make sure no one noticed their conversation, mentioning that the others had been sent by the tyrant. Haruto nodded in acknowledgement. The two opponents then locked eyes, preparing for the seventh duel between Tyrant the Scorned and Silva Pierce. Lux addressed Haruto coldly, calling him a boy, to which the armored knight acknowledged his interlocutor's strength and praised him for arriving unharmed. Haruto, however, limited himself to a brief thank you. The formidable fighter confidently declared that he could easily defeat him, but at the same time expressed respect for such warriors and offered to take him under his wing if he swears allegiance. He politely declined the offer, explaining that he would hardly be popular if everyone thought he served a troll. The sinister adversary demanded an oath of allegiance, his gaze flashing with fury, while the other calmly replied that he would show mercy and give another chance to submit. The armored man angrily declared that he was tired of wasting time and demanded that they stop chatting and start fighting, while sarcastically asking if his opponent kept such delicate hands for decoration. A fierce warrior with sharp fangs loudly proclaimed that if he decided to bare his teeth, he could die right here. Two large magic circles lit up on the ground, and the figure next to them froze, while the young man realized with horror that they had been placed in advance. A thin, hooded figure explained that he was receiving a buff from the mages, a binding field slowed the target, and a vulnerability effect reduced physical defense, turning everything into a series of debuffs. The dark-haired man noted the excessive precautions as the chain warrior towered over him, casting a heavy shadow. Two onlookers watched in horror as the shackled fighter was violently thrown from the balcony railing inside the majestic hall. The knight in heavy armor breathed heavily, then loudly declared himself the strongest and demanded that his primacy be immediately recognized. The shackled opponent mockingly asked if he was finished yet, and the determined warrior with a scarred face responded with a confident grin. Reynold carefully calculated the attack damage and the applied defense debuff, analyzing how it would affect his passive skill, and wondered what formulas were used to create such values. Meanwhile, the knight in armor was shocked that his opponent was still standing on his feet, and he only grinned, explaining that he had received exactly 100 damage and now understood what it felt like. He then admitted that he had long wanted to conduct a test to assess the damage, but had not found a suitable target, and thanked his opponent for the data he had provided, even though it had been obtained through dishonest tricks. The warrior, chained in chains, looked at him sternly and asked him in a reserved tone what exactly he meant, not hiding his harshness. In response, there was a confident statement that it was precisely such small opponents that he had been looking for all this time. Then the knight cried out in despair that he could not afford to lose, expressing his inner struggle and strong emotions. At this moment, the woman hastily announced that Grandmaster Tyrant had lost consciousness and could no longer continue the fight. The man raised his fist in victory and a loud voice announced that Silva Pierce was the winner, instantly capturing the attention of the entire arena. After this, the girl joyfully threw the money into the air and screamed with delight, but the man standing next to her reacted sharply, and she quickly apologized, promising to collect everything back. The hero quietly noted to himself that most people would never see such a sum in their entire lives, and admitted that nothing could be done about it. Harrod asked how he could remain calm after losing 100 million G, to which Lax calmly replied that he was quite happy with the tough, dried food in the cheap hotel. They then discussed the amenities, noting that staying in a luxury hotel attached to the casino would be more pleasant, but one of them insisted that it was a waste of time, as the place was too far from the shopping district. The girl with pigtails encouraged the young man, saying that he should enjoy delicious food and the company of beautiful women, and the dark-haired guy looked down, while the short-haired companion shouted that now everyone sees him as a hero. The girl, amazed, admitted that she was amazed by the incredible power, adding that she had never met such a powerful person, and asked where he got such power from. He firmly replied that he had a whole mountain of things to do, and he was not here to rest, and she, hearing this, asked in bewilderment what a mountain of things meant. He hesitated for a moment, then admitted that he himself was not sure, but agreed that it could be called a larger mission when asked directly. The girl enthusiastically expressed admiration, while he reacted unexpectedly, showing confusion and slight surprise. She admitted that meeting him was the greatest event in her life, emphasizing his dedication and noble goals. He bowed low and firmly declared that he would accompany her to the end of her journey, expressing firm determination in every word. Finally, he asked why she did not open a shop in the capital, since her share would have been enough for this, but the girl replied that serving him was a rare honor that was worth much more. He calmly pointed out that she was attributing too much to him, but the girl desperately objected, denying his words, and then suddenly froze in amazement when he silenced her. After that, he asked her where she was from, and she nervously replied that her village was very small, where only sheep and cows lived. The narrator explained that Maton was a tiny village with no marks on the map, no shops or quests. The only thing that stuck in my memory was the endless killing of sheep for wool and skins. Then he asked her to look at the next sheet and read it, and she was surprised to think that the inscription reminded her of some foreign language. He asked if she couldn't read the text, but she shook her head sharply, showing firmness in her gaze, and answered decisively. At that moment, the girl was roughly silenced with a palm, and someone noted to themselves that she stood out too much to be an ordinary character, beginning to doubt whether she was a reincarnator. Haruto firmly stated that he would not regret his decision, no matter how dangerous it was, and Lax nervously agreed to obey and follow orders from now on. The girl insisted that she would help, despite the warning that no one would take responsibility for her fate, and he only sighed heavily, watching her stubbornness. Reynold asked about the next steps, but Haruto was confident that this background figure could be the key to a new way to complete the game, and so he took it with him. She excitedly asked if they would go to another city to fight a giant monster, but in response she heard that the goal was much simpler, pleasant shopping. After this, they agreed to split up. One ordered to buy everything that had been mentioned earlier, without thinking about the costs, and received in response a short understood in the middle of a noisy market. He explained that he was looking to acquire equipment for the next stage, reminding that EOE has many rare items and the ability to enchant them with magic stones. In a quiet room, the man explained that each item could have up to 6 effects, but that creating the optimal version was extremely difficult, and then the young man enthusiastically found what he was looking for. He examined the one-handed sword and noted that it could only contain one effect and was sold at a retail price that was too high for its stats. The fair-haired interlocutor confidently asked to sell him the item, explaining that money would guarantee the desired result, even if he had little time. Another confirmed the price of 200,000 G and handed over the money, wrapped in cloth. Then the scene changed. A young man in a cloak appeared on the quiet street and cautiously entered the semi-dark room, preparing for an unknown meeting. He checked his equipment and realized that he had not rested since arriving in this world, feeling the need for a break, but knowing that things were not yet finished. A cloaked man knocked on the door, and the man inside asked him why he had come, then questioned whether he was an informant, to which the visitor replied in the negative, jokingly suggesting that he might be a seller of strawberry daifuku. Then the interlocutor with the covered face clarified what exactly he wanted to know, and the white-haired man replied that he was interested in information about the syndicate. The hooded figure apologized, saying she had nothing to offer the syndicate and advised them to look for answers elsewhere, while the man with long hair watched with a grim look. Then he reminded himself that in the game it was necessary to visit this place multiple times in order to gain the informant's trust and continue the quest. Suddenly, one activated the ability, accompanied by the crackle of lightning, carefully touching the wall and wondering if this was the right place. A stranger wrapped in a cloak came out through the wall, and the shocked man demanded an explanation of where he had come from, but the newcomer sharply reprimanded him for being rude to customers. The dark-haired man demanded information, promising payment and claiming to know the truth, but the frightened interlocutor denied everything and begged him to leave. Then Lux handed over the promised money and told him to use it to escape, but the hooded one warned him that getting involved with the syndicate would mean certain death if he valued his life. After this, the man in the cloak thought about what he had heard and the meaning of seeking information only after gaining fame, but he remained in doubt whether he had fully fulfilled the conditions. Meanwhile, another figure warned that anyone who digs around the faceless ones will be sentenced to death, emphasizing the deadly consequences of such actions. Lux called out sharply to his companion, telling him to be careful and asking if he had tried to kill him, and his companion reacted with surprise. The determined man then explained that the new main quest of the expansion was to investigate and stop a global conspiracy by the Faceless Syndicate. He emphasized that the opponents are extremely dangerous not only because of their high characteristics, but also because they fight with double short blades. Then the story turned to the rare weapon Dark Moon, which was 2 blades, each of which had its own ability, Waxing Moon and Waning Moon. The narrative noted that the right side, symbolizing the Waxing Moon, causes bleeding on every hit and also allows for multiple damage over time effects. Looking at the left blade, he realized that it inflicted even more damage with multiple bleedings, and realized that even one hit would lead to catastrophic consequences. At this moment, Haruto furiously crossed blades with the shrouded opponent, while the other one watched closely from afar, preparing to intervene if necessary. The wrapped one demanded that the fight be stopped, while the opponent angrily declared that no one wanted to listen to him. The one in the cloak thought about how difficult it was to capture enemies alive, because when threatened, they instantly teleported, and the knight next to him thought that keeping them unharmed was necessary for the future. Harrod, determined not to let his plans fail, admitted he had no choice, while the hooded one asked if he was ready for the next challenge. Kageyama challenged his opponent, noting that he was aiming for his neck, and offered him his only chance because of his tenacity. The man with the sharp gaze, wincing in pain, declared that he had finally caught the enemy, and the hooded man reacted to these words with surprise. The man falls hard to the ground, and the other, catching his breath, notes that judo training has unexpectedly turned out to be useful right now. He then mockingly expresses regret that they have to wear such ridiculous masks, holding one almost close to his face. After this, he reassures his companion that he will soon feel better, demonstrating a caring and gentle expression. Soon he says the word blood in a calm tone, causing the other man's eyes to widen, and the man lying nearby groans faintly, muttering about joints, regrets, impulses and pinwheels. Lax, tears in his eyes, struggles to articulate fragmentary words about blood, fields of flowers, and returning home. Then his intense gaze flashes, he mentions the abyss and softly addresses Mitsuki, asking her to wake up, because it is already morning. Lux, sitting on the ground, apologizes to her brother, and he admits her guilt and calls her his little sister. The girl anxiously asks why her brother is here and whether he told her to come, but he calmly states that she must do everything he orders, reminding her that it has always been this way. The hooded figure is gradually revealed to be Mitsuki, an assassin from the Faceless Syndicate, a human weapon with inhuman abilities that guarantee the death of her targets. The narration explains that her heavy drug use leaves her mentally fragile, but the Syndicate compensates for this by brainwashing her into obeying someone she perceives as a brother. The man admits to feeling uneasy using such methods, but notes that he now has a reliable ally, as Mitsuki starts at level 40 as a high-ranking assassin. He reflects on how he always chooses the strongest and most broken characters as companions, and then cheerfully hands over a piece of candy, receiving a joyful yes in return. After this, the girl enthusiastically asks what they will do next and asks if they need to kill anyone, but he calmly replies that there is no need for killing now. She anxiously asks if he is okay, and he, clutching his sword and wincing in pain, insists that they need to return to the tavern immediately. Lux assures him that everything is fine despite the wound, while Haruto notes that the bleeding from the dark moon causes serious damage and Silva's body alone cannot withstand it. Lux grits his teeth in pain, complaining that the burning is unbearable, and Haruto grumbles next to him that he will never do something like that again. Exhausted, he falls onto his bed and thinks about how successful the last 3 days have been, wondering if he deserves a short rest. Lux tells Mitsuki to sit down and rest on a chair, and she, slightly surprised, still agrees. At this moment, a cheerful girl bursts into the room, loudly announcing her return and proudly telling that today is her first day as a minion, and she did an excellent job. Mitsuki nervously asks who the noisy person is, and the man explains that it is his younger sister, after which the guest hastily apologizes, deciding that she caught them doing something strange. The girl nervously makes excuses that she accidentally ran into his younger sister while shopping, and then he rushes to apologize again. Lux listens attentively as Roma calls himself Anika's devoted henchman and expresses a desire to get to know him better, while he himself looks at his interlocutor with a cold gaze. After the formalities, he asks Roma to show him what she bought, and she happily opens a bag full of shiny round objects, asking his opinion. The girl proudly declares that she went around all the shops in the city and bought everything that was there, showing off the things she collected as proof of her diligence. Then he calmly explains that the current amount is not enough and that in fact about 10 times more is needed, which surprises his companion. The girl with braids with tears agrees to continue shopping tomorrow, and in exchange receives permission to rest today after a hard day. The young man asks why someone is always following him, but she indignantly asks him not to call her that and assures him that she has enough courage, despite her appearance. He thinks for a moment, then asks for help tomorrow, reminding him to get a good night's sleep, and receives cheerful consent in response. Meanwhile, someone notices that the seventh is late and demands an explanation about what happened to one guy, when a cloaked figure approaches the other, who is lying on the ground. Lux reports that the target was stronger than expected, causing a delay, as he even broke her mask, while another is watching closely from above. The masked man is indignant about why they brought the prisoner, since the order was only to kill, but he receives the answer that the technological division ordered to capture alive those with high combat performance. One confirms that he used a drug and tied up the prisoner, while others note that even in this state he will pose a danger if he comes to. Two hooded men discuss the rarity of the target being brought in alive, and one admits he can't even remember if something like this has happened before. The cloaked interlocutor confirms the accuracy of the memory and asks if any traces remain, and the other replies that nothing was found. One man asked if the other had felt anything strange about his condition, and he was worried that suspicious people might rewrite the suggestion, forcing him to either fight his way out or risk her sudden departure through the teleporter. Lux Arwen solemnly swears allegiance, promising to destroy anyone his brother points at, even if it is another member of the syndicate. The hooded figure reluctantly agrees, and then another orders the prisoner to be taken to the cells immediately and promises to sort things out later. Soon the hooded man strikes the chained opponent with force, causing him to let out a painful groan from the blow. The girl asks if he is okay, and hears in response that everything is fine, only the clothes are a little dirty, and the armor itself turned out to be surprisingly comfortable. He calmly reminds Mitsuki that good girls get sweets, which makes her happy, and then clarifies where the place he spoke of is, and she readily leads him forward. Lux's sudden appearance Arvina forces Haruto Kageyama flinched, and he sharply demanded to know who she was and why she had come at the end of his shift. Two cloaked figures react warily to a loud noise, after which one quickly climbs up the rope, and the others hurry after it up the stone tower. Lux asks which cell the prisoner is in, and is then shown that it is the one in the farthest back. One person asks if a prisoner is alive, and the other person asks if he is the new guard. The girl in the cell asks to bring her some hot soup or something similar in honor of meeting her and adds that she wouldn't mind some soft bread from time to time. She asks if he is one of the masked men, but is told that requests for food are best directed to the one dozing nearby. The cheerful young man greets Akatsuki happily, genuinely surprised to meet her and asking how she is doing. The girl explains that she brought someone at her brother's request, while the other one anxiously thinks about the consequences if they are seen again. One figure angrily accuses someone of repeating a terrible act against a woman, while the accused stands behind bars in shackles. The girl demands to know why she was mistaken for her older brother, while the man calmly denies any connection with the syndicate and urges her to calm down. He admits that he did indeed use mind washing without making any excuses, and the other one immediately accuses him of forcing the girl to kill again, confirming his suspicions. She furiously demands to know how many people were forced to commit murders and threatens to deal with him herself before things go too far. The man calmly replies that he doesn't know exactly how much. He adds that she did kill, but emphasizes that he never ordered her to kill and does not intend to do so. The narrative reveals that Akatsuki is another human weapon, just like Mitsuki, her twin sister, but due to uncontrollable outbursts and strange characteristics, she was deemed a failed experiment and imprisoned. Lux, confused, asks if he's lying, then turns to Mitsuki and asks if she received the order to kill, internally noting her ability to detect lies and realizing that the syndicate considers her defective. Lux muses that the previous Aniki ordered this one to be killed, but there were no orders now, while the other man calmly urges him not to dwell on it. Lux coldly concludes that his interlocutor has no connection with the syndicate, but adds mockingly that he was reckless in sneaking in alone without the slightest sense of danger. He admits with cold confidence that he may be acting like an idiot, but he still intends to save the one who dared to go against orders, while the other cautiously inquires about his purpose. Lux outright states that he is seeking help to take over the syndicate, and Haruto clarifies what exactly he means by such help, while the other two watch silently from the sidelines. A group of hooded figures line up at the gate, threatening the intruder that he will not leave alive. Lux coldly asks if they're going to keep talking nonsense, while Haruto challenges them to a bet about taking over the syndicate, warning them they'll die here. Lux then tells them to just watch as the fight begins. The black-haired girl enthusiastically calls her brother amazing, while the blonde next to her just looks on in bewilderment, not understanding why such praise followed. Haruto confidently declares that he knows where the real puppeteer is hiding and intends to confront him face to face, while an unseen voice from the shadows questions his true motives. He explains that he needs the syndicate's power for a variety of reasons, and also emphasizes the need to secure Akatsuki's support. The girl listens attentively as someone's hand reaches out to her with a request to take over the leadership of the syndicate and a promise of only one thing in return. Lax vows to never force Mitsuki to kill again, and after being warned of the consequences of breaking his oath, Haruto agrees, expressing his desire to turn the secret syndicate into a safe, clean, and peaceful community. The massive creature demands surrender as the girl stretches out her arms, the man breaks through the wall, and another insistently asks to borrow an item while she prepares to strike. She cheerfully suggests they get along, addressing him as a brother, and he confidently agrees, noting that now all the pieces of the puzzle are in place. A cloaked figure announces that the final battle of the expansion is decisive, and the determined warrior immediately calls for an immediate battle with the main enemy. One provocatively advises the girl to undress and become a dancer, and she, looking down, admits that she agreed, feeling strong irritation and inner annoyance. She hesitates, admitting that she feels awkward wearing too revealing an outfit, even if it is the captain's order. The determined girl clenches her fist in silence, while another turns away with a blushing face and refuses, and a third suggests talking to the captain to reconsider. The man persistently asks Natalia for support, demanding that she swear on the silver spear as proof of her loyalty. He clenches his fist in frustration, thinking that breaking his word after agreeing would be even more humiliating, and decides to give up the title of knight, just to keep his promise. She timidly asks if it is permissible to change clothes as he asked, and is immediately told that it is perfect. He admits that he hasn't allowed himself to enjoy a good bath in a long time, showing a rare moment of weakness. The girl asks sharply if she isn't ashamed, but she confidently replies that she has long since gotten over this feeling. She calmly explains that the syndicate has already examined her from head to toe, so now embarrassment does not matter to her at all. One of the members hurriedly asks Mitsuki to bring some laundry, while someone nearby reacts with obvious surprise. He firmly states that she cannot walk around without clothes, and despite her protests, he insistently orders her to return immediately, explaining that the brothers are looking at the sisters with inappropriate glances. The determined girl is already preparing to carry out the order, but suddenly freezes when two smaller copies of herself appear nearby, causing shock to those present. Lux reacts with irritation to the noise, but then calms himself with the thought that it's just the twins. The man asks if this is the subordinate he was warned about, and she confirms, while the little girl loudly introduces herself as Roma Phyrus. She responds shyly to the praise, while another warmly notes that her brother called her a wonderful helper. Akatsuki delivers the praise in a cold but respectful tone, without looking down, thereby immediately cementing his place in the hierarchy of their relationship. The girl happily confirms that she has brought everything necessary, while papers and cards are spectacularly scattered around. The girl with braids notes with admiration the speed of collecting such a large number of items, and someone else confirms that they had to travel around nearby cities to replenish supplies. He wonders out loud about the reason for her smile, and then admits that it is because she has never praised him so directly before. She apologizes and hesitantly asks what the collected stones are for, while he explains that they are flash stones. Lax sternly warns that destroying such objects will lead to consequences, while Haruto raises his hand to protect himself from the flying debris. The girl asks not to frighten her with such antics and then clarifies for what purpose the other is going to use the stones. He thanks her for her efforts and asks her to remain on hold until further orders, to which she quietly agrees, fully understanding the instructions. They confirm their readiness and announce the start with determination, demonstrating a firm intention to move forward. A confident warrior announces the final battle with the syndicate leader, and a cloaked figure calmly acknowledges the approach of the climax. The three characters enthusiastically agree to complete the expansion, showing unity and determination to work together. The two girls are discussing with disbelief whether it is really the puppeteer himself in front of them, and at this point the narrative shifts to the three standing on a bridge and looking out over a village in the mountains. The girl insists on being called cautious, while the armored companion chides her for being overly anxious around the cloaked figure. Lax Arwen confidently assures that the target is indeed here, despite the fact that this place is not on the maps, and the narrative reveals that the puppeteer has several bases, and the key to the solution is the ability to identify the correct one. The camera zooms in on the character's face as he explains in detail the location of the syndicate's base and mentions Mitsuki's equipment during the upcoming meeting. The narrative notes that she always carries the unique weapon Dark Moon and is clad in the full best-faced assassin set, with her necklace randomly changing between 3 variations. Haruto wonders why the other is wearing a strange outfit, while the narration clarifies, the leader is indeed in the syndicate's base, and this time she chose a simple necklace. He proudly shows off his new gear, and 2 girls happily support him, admiring him and calling him cool, while praising one of them as a good girl who deserves candy. She wonders why everyone is being so cautious before fighting such an incredible figure, but soon they come to a well, and one of the companions doubts whether this is really the right place. Lux Arwen notes the strangeness of the surroundings as the group looks around carefully, and suddenly an ominous voice says that it has been a long time since there have been any guests in the mausoleum. Kageyama sharply demands to be identified, and the others notice the silhouette and realize that the leader of the syndicate and the final boss of the expansion is approaching them. The dark figure happily announces that experimental subjects 6 and 7 are Akatsuki and Mitsuki, expressing perverse satisfaction at their betrayal. The 2 characters freeze in tension as the narrative shifts focus to Silva Pierce, captain of the Holy Kingdom of Eternia's 3rd Special Forces, emphasizing the determination in his gaze. A mysterious figure in dark robes with a staff appears among the shadows and debris, revealing himself as the true leader of the syndicate. Hoodie admits he's been found, while the boy reacts with delight, amazed that a normally minor character is getting a rare story arc and an expansion. The armored warrior reflects on the colossal suffering and sacrifice, while the young companion nonchalantly claims that only 5 days have passed. One character remarks that only 5 days have passed since the beginning, another confirms the torment they have endured, and this causes the other 2 to exchange puzzled glances. The group climbs up to a figure on the stone steps who praises them for their work, but one of the armored men pointedly ignores the words. He admits that much had to be sacrificed for the sake of a great goal, but then adds the opposite remark, starting with however. Lux Arwen excitedly announces that he has finally achieved his dream, revealing a powerful fragment of Telos, the god of destruction who once terrorized the world. Someone warns another not to spoil the narrative, reminding them that they are still only in the 1st chapter of the main story. Haruto furiously commands the slaves of the Eternal Tree to behold the destructive power of the Great Tree's circle, and the scene is filled with colossal energy. The figure lets out a piercing cry of pain as it is pierced and crushed by the gigantic force, and the ground around it cracks with a roar. The camera pans to a close-up of the terrifying skeletal enemy, and the character notes that since this is the true final boss of the expansion, its power is extreme. The narration explains that the enemy's stats are incredibly high, and his combat techniques are varied and complex. The narration notes that many of his attacks result in instant death. The fight is divided into 3 phases with increasingly complex attack patterns, and the entire encounter is chock full of annoying mechanics, making him the most torturous enemy in the entire game. The armored warrior warns that fighting this enemy in the usual way is pointless, but he himself does not intend to do so, while 2 companions listen to him attentively in the semi-dark hall. Kageyama confidently assures his allies that everything is under control, though one of them worries about their chances against such a powerful enemy, and Lux quietly agrees. A sinister figure proclaims that the brutal age of light will end with the death of the enemy, while a monster nearby boasts that an awakening has already begun in his world. A confident fighter mockingly challenges his enemy, declaring that he will not get a single move, after which he splits the ground under his feet with a crushing blow. Suddenly a monstrous silhouette appears, causing horror and panic, and one of the heroes, with a scream, notes the terrible image that has appeared before them. Lux fights the creature furiously, cursing it as it gleefully declares that his current blows are weak compared to its ultimate darkness, and the fight quickly escalates. The light from the flash stones, which have a sacred property, stuns monsters, but unexpectedly affects a low-level dark creature, drawing out its power. The hero desperately tries to maintain the stun, realizing that the stone takes 0.4 seconds to activate, and the paralysis only lasts 0.75 seconds, making the task almost impossible. He explains that each piece of equipment he has increases his attack speed, bringing the bonus up to 200%, allowing him to strike 3 times faster than usual. Haruto struggles to cope with another blow and considers the fighting style absurd, but soon confidently asserts that it is indeed possible to fight in such a rhythm. He reveals that he has prepared 431 flash stones and challenges his opponent to withstand them, while the other one repeats the number 400 with shock. The girl confidently declares that about 300 is enough for her, while praising Roma's efforts, and the monster angrily warns her not to get cocky. The silhouette calls upon the ancestors, commanding them to crush their enemies, and bone warriors rise from the earth, beginning a furious attack. A phantom skeleton appears on the surface, and the narration explains that this stage summons ghostly images of former leaders, making any direct confrontation difficult. The dark-haired man decisively announces the plan, and the girl with the headband and the hooded companion smile, indicating that the strategy against the enemies has already been prepared. A skeleton in a cloak rises from a pile of stones and calls out to the spirits of his ancestors in a menacing voice, commanding them to destroy their enemies. Kageyama confidently claims that they had planned for this scenario beforehand, then Lax strikes the skeleton, causing it to shatter into pieces with a scream. She remarks that the task turned out to be easier than expected, and he enthusiastically declares that he is enjoying making his way along the stone passage with her. The narrative explains that the scattered tombstones summon illusions of the former leaders at set intervals, and the two were told in advance the time and order of these phantoms' appearance. The two jump over the cracked rocky plain, realizing that this way they could easily seal away the dangerous power. The knight doubted that this was how warriors should fight, considering it a disgrace, but the other one mockingly declared that in battle only victory was important. Haruto lets out a furious cry and strikes, and the scene then shifts to a dark cave with sharp ledges, where a narrow wooden bridge stretches over the abyss. The last enemy rushes to attack, but the enemy is shocked, not believing in the power of the syndicate and their bloodline, expressing bewilderment and anguish. After a grueling fight, the man in dark armor breathes a sigh of relief, the girl with short hair happily agrees, and the fair-haired companion is surprised that the victory came so easily. He suggests taking the find first before thinking about anything else. The armored warrior confidently announces the completion of the mission, and someone nearby delightedly reports that the item has been found. The narration explains that the staff shown belonged to the leader and served as a means of communication to control the syndicate from the shadows. The man in the dark cloak solemnly announces the completion of the takeover of the organization, and the silver-haired woman asks what will happen next, looking at the motley group that is gathered. Lux asks what's troubling Alicia, and she nervously admits that she used to serve as a captain in a national military unit, recalling someone's words. Lux animatedly tells his two companions about his request, then asks where they are heading next, and the armored interlocutor responds with a short, puzzled echo. Lux coldly clarifies that he is the captain, not the older brother, and formally invites them to join his squad, although one finds it strange, but at the same time natural. One of them suggests that the mind-washing has stopped, while another explains that her mental defense mechanism has been activated, which surprises the third. Lax reasons that her subconscious probably chose to keep the image of her older brother around to help her adapt, while Haruto silently ponders, listening from behind. He assumes that she does indeed like this image, then states his desire to stop playing brother and sister, but is reminded that the strength of the two is still needed. She smiles warmly and asks her older brother not to pretend that he will leave them behind by demanding a promise. He notes to himself that the situation has become quite strange, then calls Mitsuki to come back, and she immediately replies that she is coming. Haruto warns them to prepare for what's to come, stating that he doesn't stand on ceremony with his younger sisters, while two girls cheer happily, and one suddenly screams. They explain that by using the syndicate's power, they can rapidly enhance their allies' abilities, and the group listens with determined expressions on their faces. Haruto confidently declares that they will now use this weapon against their enemies and advance to the next stage, his gaze shining with unwavering determination. They stopped at the entrance to a dark cave, and he asked her if she had noticed anything, but she replied that it was too dark inside to make out details. Alicia harshly criticized the person who suddenly slowed down, but Haruto stood up for her, and then the other participant apologized. After that, the scene changed to show a figure running out of the barracks, pondering what was happening. He was shocked, but she coldly remarked that she had never asked him to pursue her. He was quick to stop the argument, explaining that arguing would do no good and insisted that they focus on escaping together, while she argued that that was all they needed to think about. The group carefully discussed how to remain calm so as not to attract the attention of the creature lurking nearby. One of them warned that speaking loudly could get them all into trouble. The girl sincerely apologized to the guy with disheveled hair, and a stern lady stood next to her, watching silently. He held the spear given to him by the captain and declared that he would use it if necessary, while the other one skeptically noted that he had more words than skills. The young man angrily accused his interlocutor of idle talk, but she decisively interrupted them, ordering them to immediately stop the squabble. They wandered along a dark tunnel that seemed endless, until one of the companions suddenly noticed something ahead. He struggled to lift the heavy object, gritting his teeth and ordering himself to squeeze out a little more effort despite the intense tension. Making his way through the dense forest, he finally broke out and joyfully raised his hands, celebrating his own salvation. The two girls were delighted to realize that they had reached the surface, and one promised to immediately drop the rope, while the other was hesitant, but her friend encouraged her to get up first. He insisted that as a civilian she should go up first, but she cut off his argument and told him to climb up quickly. He anxiously asked if she had managed to get out, and she happily replied that so much time had passed since their last meeting. He offered to help, but she shrugged and noted that Leia had told her to go first, so now it was her turn, despite his insistence. They began talking about the importance of checking their location, and one turned to Hawk for support while standing in the middle of a forest clearing. She carefully examined his hand and thanked him, while he winced in pain and admitted that he had not been able to hold anything for a long time. He asked her to show her palms, and she asked in surprise why, but he firmly repeated the demand. Lux was surprised to hear a caustic remark from the side about who would even want to watch that. Sophia raised her hands to the sky and called upon the ancient power, commanding the eternal ring of space, which began to shine. The moment had come to answer and call long past moments to this place, as if memory itself had responded to the call. She sincerely thanked him for the help provided, but the interlocutor replied that gratitude was not required, since this was simply a return of a debt. Haruto sarcastically remarked that she had no prettiness whatsoever, but Alicia abruptly ordered them to stop arguing and focus on finding a solution. Then Kageyama loudly warned the two to stay away from the hole from which a terrible monster with a huge mouth burst out. Alicia panicked and recognized the creature, noting that it was a planivirm, only much larger, while Haruto stood before the monster with determination. The girl quickly ordered Mia to prepare her spear and asked what else they could do, while the other one doubted whether they understood what they were facing. Haruto assured them that such a monster posed no threat, as they belonged to the 3rd Special Forces Squad, clutching their weapons with unwavering determination. Kyle rushed at the huge creature, intending to crush it, but his companion desperately called out his name, seeing how he was barely holding back the onslaught. Mia was running through the forest when she suddenly tripped and fell, causing Haruto to cry out her name in alarm. Then the girl called upon a powerful stasis spell, and magical chains along with shining runes appeared, freezing the chaos around. Reynolds shouted at Mia to run while he held back the threat, and she, stunned, clutched her hands to her chest, hesitated, calling his name. At the same moment, another girl screamed and warned Rei about the danger creeping up on the left. Suddenly, a destructive technique called lightning dash burst forth, causing a gigantic explosion that made the entire forest tremble. The armadillo asked with concern if everyone was okay, and the dark silhouette was surprised by his appearance, while the young blonde silently watched from behind. He briefly said that the conversation would be postponed until later, and then the group gathered their courage, preparing to move on under the shade of the trees. Haruto loudly called on his comrades to destroy the monster roaring before them, and everyone prepared to meet the terrifying enemy.